Hello, Culture Matters podcast. Boy, am I excited to introduce you to our guest. Before I do that, here is a quote just for this podcast. Praise is more obtrusive than a reproach. Our dear friend, John Swartz, is back. If you know the Culture Matters podcast, you know John Swartz. If you don't like me, you likely don't know John Swartz. If you like John Swartz, you like me. Well, I can easily see the flaws in that logic right there. John has been helping people in the real estate community for decades now, and he's aging backwards like Benjamin Button.
Yeah.
Beyond that, he's bringing expertise, he's bringing advisory, he's bringing an outlier perspective in an industry riddled with normies, as they call it in the internet blogs. John is someone that looks at real estate with a fine tooth comb. He will help, a home buyer or a home seller just as much as a real estate investor. He can speak all the languages of whoever his clients are, and he's a resource for, outside the box thinking as it relates to the industry. Today, we're going to talk about some of the happenings in the industry. Thanks for coming back, brother.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you. I always like going on doing these.
Yeah, I mean, so like the first things first is, are there going to be buyer's agents in 2028?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, I know you're talking about the lawsuit thing of the NAR and all that stuff. So years ago, I mean, this business started. It was people paid a commission to just a listing agent, and just the people just sold their house to a listing agent. This whole system was where you had buyer and seller agents was just to expand. It was the MLS was a tool for the listing agent to have another outlet to sell, and instead of just waiting for one buyer on this place, why not have hundreds of agents work with a bunch of different buyers and bring it together and split the commission. That's how that started. And then it over time it kind of evolved into where there was like buyer representation. They made it like representations. Now this is what got the water's all muddy in my opinion, because the seller pays the commission. That's how it was structured. And now they make it like representation, and they call it a fiduciary duty. Now you add a lot more responsibility on the buyer's agent, who aren't really experts enough, in my opinion, to be a fiduciary, to be labeled that, because that's a very high standard for a advisory role for someone with just a real estate license, I think. And then now it's, over time, now you got, all right, well, how can you be representing me if you're paid by the seller? And people to a regular public and people that don't, do this business, they don't understand all that goes into it. So like, yeah, that makes sense. Why? How can you represent my interest if I'm getting paid by the seller? But they're not really getting paid by the seller. They're really getting paid by the seller's agent through the seller's commission relationship with the listing agent. Yeah, but yeah, there's going to be buyer's agents. It's just going to be. I really think. I mean, and nobody knows for sure, but there's definitely going to be a push. There's a huge. We talked about this first podcast I did with you probably 4 years ago. There was a push to push down commissions with technology and different things. Now, should it still be? I mean, look, I'm in the business, but our job is a lot easier with a lot of like legwork and different things and driving and things like that have gotten with technology have come down. So should some of that be passed on to a consumer? Yeah, because you got rising prices. The housing prices are really expensive now, and you have and the job's a little easier. Like I know, I mean, I knock 3 hours a day off of my regular routine just by not driving contracts around, not going over the
Three
contracts.
hours?
At least, yeah, like stuff that would take me till, I used to work till 7, 8 o'clock at night. I don't do it anymore because I'm not driving contracts over to other offices, dropping them off, 6 copies, dropping it off to the mortgage company. I mean, over time, that's all changed. Having your cell phone on you at all times at home makes things more efficient. Being able to do things through apps on your phone, digital signing, all those things that stuff got taken out. The price of houses went up, and the commission rates have stayed the same. So I think the public is, and then in this past market, you had so many people, and then all these reality TV shows, they have these huge commissions on there. People get excited, and everybody joins the business, and like literally, there's all these people out there part time they're acting in a fiduciary role, and they're just, basically shuffling around people into these buildings, and then they're getting paid huge commissions. And it's kind of overpayment. I can see why public and some other people would see it that way. But there is a need for, people are saying, well, there'll just be a listing agent now, and there'll be a buyer will get an attorney. I'm like, well, attorney's not going to go and show you houses on Sunday morning. Attorney's not going to go, and people are going to let strangers in their house. You're going to need to have a license to show the house. They're not going to want to hear in the middle of the night, Friday night at 8 o'clock, that their dog, they don't think their dog's gonna like the backyard. I mean, you're gonna need buyer's agents out there. That's definitely attorneys can do the legal stuff and all that stuff, but they're lawyers for a reason. They don't want to drive people around their cars, chill out. That's not gonna happen. So what I do see happening is the standard is gonna be a lot higher. You're not gonna be able to, buyer's not gonna call you up and just hey, I'm out front of this house, and just call whoever answers the phone off of Zillow and say, hey, I'm here, and then the buyer is gonna run out and show you the house and all that stuff. They're going to have their own signed agreement. I think that's where it's going to go. Everybody's going to have a buyer agency agreement that lays out all the responsibilities they do for a certain fee. And people are going to interview 2 or 3 of them or 4 of them and then decide which one they like the best. And then they'll sign that agreement. And they can still get paid by the proceeds of the house, right? And then they're going to negotiate that offer. So when if I have a buyer agency agreement with a client, and let's say it's for 2.5%, I put an offer in with the listing agent and say, hey, it's contingent on me getting 2.5% also. And they can come back and say, well, we're only going to pay you 1. Then I have to go to my buyer and say, hey, they'll do this, but they're only going to pay me 1. The other 1.5 has to come from you. Or no, we'll go back and increase the price so they can still get it paid, almost like a closing cost credit, something like that. That's how I see it going. And I think it's a good thing for the business, actually, because now you can actually have a fiduciary agreement. Your responsibilities are laid out in the buyer agency agreement, which is a step people don't take now because they just run people around. Because when it was so crazy, the inventory, you didn't have time for all that. But now it'll be more of a planned process. I think it'll take away some of the people that are, they're not really knowledgeable. They haven't been doing it for a long time. Because if you're a buyer now, you're sitting down with a couple different agents, and one says I've been in a business for 6 months, the other one says 10 years. And they have a track record and reviews and all that stuff. They're going to consider all that when they sign. So I think it's a good thing, because it was very crazy last couple of years. It was just, there's so many people that I put deals together where I put deals together where, like, I'm dealing with the agent on the other end, and I'm like, oh my God, like these people, I don't know how they're dealing with this. And then I tell you, I actually changed. So when people we get a lot of buyer remorse lately because the prices are high, rates are high, and deals are, falling apart for stupid reasons, but not even because the agent doesn't know that their buyer doesn't really want it. They're just as good a salesman, and the buyer talked the buyer into something. Well, it's not a car that you can just send them down the road in. They got to actually follow through the transaction. They have a lot of responsibilities to do. And then what happens? The deal falls apart, and I get egg on my face with my seller, right? I tell them they got an offer for $350. Next thing you know, waiting for the contract doesn't come in. So I make them now. I put in there, because offers used to be a contract, not an offer sheet. They still do it pretty much everywhere in the world other than South Jersey. An offer is a deposit. It's got consideration, which is the deposit. It's a bona fide offer with a closing date, clearly defined terms. It's a contract, right? We got to this. The board went to these offer sheets back in in the 90s, because it was just easier to send an offer sheet before you do all that work, before you know if it's going anywhere, right? But I make them do the contract now. I don't present, my sellers, I tell my seller why I do it. Like, I want a full contract. I want to know that they spent 20 minutes with these people, filled it out, they signed it, and my seller accepts it, you're under contract. You can't just back out. That took a lot of headaches out of me, because I don't have that problem with buyer's remorse. And I tell you how many times I get an offer sheet, I'll tell the agent, look in the MLS instructions, I need a full contract. That's what my seller wants. And they'll argue with me about it, and then guess what? I never hear from them again. It only takes 10 minutes, but the people weren't serious, and we had people also sticking offers in that never even saw the house, just to see if it's worthy of it for their time to go. If you don't want to take the time to go show them a house, go through, quit, just get out of it. Don't do it. So I think that's what I think it's going to go, and nobody really knows for sure, but definitely I think commission prices are going to come down a little bit. People are going to have to talk, and I hear a lot of agents complain, oh no, it's always negotiable. It's always, negotiable, and that's not really how it goes. But now I've been in offices where they would have meetings that tell people you need to get 6%. You hold out your standard, you tell them this. And then when you're doing that to a crowd, a room, or if you say something like, yeah, if you don't put 3% in the MLS, nobody's going to show your property. That's where it looks like, what they call it, well, collusion. Like, looks like a collaborative effort to keep the price, like price fixing, right? So
Is that what that lawsuit is about?
yeah, that's what that was about. It was like they're calling it antitrust violations, basically, where everybody gets together and demands its commission. They're like, well, no, we don't. Yeah, when we don't, like Remax, we a lot of us, and I think that's why Remax settled the case on their side for 55 million, because they knew where it was going. And it's a long battle to fight, but we don't. I mean, each agent is independent here, so they do what they want. They do negotiate commissions on everything. But I think a lot of the bigger offices, they tell people get 6%, and they say it on Facebook. Yeah, I know what I'm worth. I know what I'm worth, and all that stuff. And your office will tell you to say things like that to your client, to push for it. And then to the point where I've seen other offices, when it got slow in 08 and 09, where they actually told their agents if they didn't get 6%, right, they would take the split based off of a 6% listing. So if you took it from 5, your split was decreased. To their end was always going to be their split up based on a 3% commission. That happened. So those couple things, you get people. What's that?
What do you think that does to the culture?
Oh, it's not good. It creates a culture of, almost like price fixing, and they basically put that out, and that's what they're mad about. That's what the lawsuit's about. People are like saying I had to pay a buyer's agent, and if you look at it on a basic, if you're not in the business, you look at it from a basic point of view. Yeah, why do I have to pay the buyer's agent 3%, or they're not going to show my listing because their split changes, or because they get paid less, and then they do on other ones, and it creates the buyer agent. It could. I mean, for me, it doesn't, but I know it does. It could taint the demand out there, because if I'm getting paid 2% on one and 3% on the other, I would push.
Let me get this right. So the consumer could potentially be afraid of the consequences of not curtailing to this 3% to the buyer.
Correct.
And that essentially is anti-free market in a sense.
Right. It's all in reality, like everything is negotiable. That's what the law is and everything. But there is an underlying theme that's been happening over years, where people, the offices will tell the agents hold to that number, right? And it would affect them. And if an agent goes in there and says, look, if there's $20 over here and there's 15 over here, it's human instinct, right, to try to push the 20. I don't think most professionals do. I think people that are full-time and really do, they just want to sell houses to clients, because in reality, the percentage, if you're worried about percentage, it's kind of stupid, because the prices of houses are different. So what the hell? I sell $100,000.
Ego. Is it ego?
I think it's just poor teaching by the higher ups, and I think poor just not being aware and not knowing that, that there's other ways to do more units, do more business. I mean, would you rather have 10 houses at 2% or 3 at 3%? And stay busy and stay focused, and which more units gives you more opportunity to meet more clients and more business and other things. But I think they just like, it's just an instinct in their head that they're thinking, oh well, 3's more than 2, and they just jump on it, right? And they don't. And it does affect the activity. I mean, I've had listings over the years where I negotiated a deal with a seller. I wanted the listing because it was nice, and they only want to pay 4%. Well, I'm not going to walk out the door and let somebody else come in and take it after me at 4. I'm going to take it, and then if it doesn't sell in a month, I'm going to be like, hey, listen, I would show it at 2%, but there are agents out there that won't. And if that happens, your activity's slow. You're going to end up. You want to take a $20,000 price reduction, or you want to pump it back up to 5 and see what that does.
You've done a lot of things with investors and business-minded people. Do you find that there's a common theme of less general commission with the larger, bigger business type people?
Absolutely. I think that's where the major push is coming from, because they're selling a house that, well, who's buying all these houses right now? A lot of them are hedge funds. right? And then that if you can, and the hedge funds, they work on points. They work on small points. So 1% of a $500 million portfolio is a shit ton of money. So
Oh yeah.
if they could change the industry that way, and then it does force, like if those agents are really pissed about this whole thing. But if you really take a step back and look at it objectively, you can see where is is a problem, because it's not, the job isn't as demanding as it used to be. The price of the houses are higher. And then you got these shows on TV where agents are riding around Rolls Royces with, women and heels and the whole, like, and it's like, well, yeah, well, how long are you going to do that before somebody says something like, yeah, you're making so much money? That's what happens. And somebody's, like, you see these $1 million listing shows. I mean, and it says commission 300,000.
Do you,
Well, it's not how you get all that by the time you chop it up and spend your money on your marketing, all the things to get there. But the perception is that,
where did this lawsuit come from?
Came from
Why now? Why now?
Department of Justice. Well, just like what I said, I think it's big, big tech companies that are heavily invested in real estate. Big hedge funds have been buying up a lot of real estate. Like I said, they want to make money on those points, and that's how they make this. That's when they pick up 1 or 2% on a big portfolio. That's a lot of money to their investors and things like that. I think that's mostly, I think, where a push came from.
Could this ultimately be better for the market?
I think so.
Why?
I definitely think so. Well, because again, the agent's going to have to be good. They have to really work hard to get it. And you know what? If you want to make that kind of money, you want to be on, do it on a high level, you should have to work for it. You shouldn't be able to just be a bartender on Friday and go out and sell a house on Saturday and make $18,000, and and then and your buyer got put in a house for, your buyer got put into a house and without a lot of knowledge of upfront of all the different things, and they weren't properly counseled and what can go wrong. Hey, had a budget money for repairs down the road, what's your long-term plan? If you're moving for 2 or 3 years, maybe you don't want to buy now, maybe you want to rent. You gotta, there's it should be, if you're going to be a fiduciary, which I think is important on both sides of that transaction, you should have to live up to a certain standard. You should have a certain level of education, a certain level of and I think this will make that happen.
What have you done to personally mentor realtors to get them past those humps of the unknowns where they make those mistakes? Like,
but it was people I work with on my team. I work side by side with. They hear me, they see me, and when they're talking on the phone, I hear them say something. I'll just go through it with them. I encourage them to do, to watch, videos and podcasts and things like that, and teach them these learning classes and things like that. But like last year, 2 years ago, so I wasn't showing houses to just random buyers. I only took on referrals because, and a lot of top producers, I think, do the same thing. It's like, listen, there's 36 offers on the house. If I want 1 in 36 odds, I could drive a half hour to the AC Expressway and go to Borgata and play roulette. They're the exact same odds. I don't want to play that game. I don't want to be putting 36 offers in, and I know it's overpriced. My buyer will probably hate me a year from now when it comes down. So I stay out of that mess. I just worked on listings, right? And I have a big client base, so I just kind of pushed that to get listings. Yeah, my units for the year were down. It's normal because I wasn't working with the buyers, but I'm not going crazy either. And I'm not putting. So I think if all the top producers with a lot of experience stuff are doing the same thing as I was, and we talk, and they were doing the same thing. They weren't running random buyers. So who's running random buyers? Who's willing to go out and run around and do that? People that are brand new, don't have a large sphere of influence that they market to. And so you're getting super high commissions because of increasing prices to people with very little experience. That doesn't mean they're bad. There's some people out there that hustle and are really
interesting incentive structure, though, because it's almost like, I'm just thinking out loud. If the incentive is to get paid really high with less experience, that could make me think I'm better than I am.
Oh, it definitely happens. Yeah.
No, I'm just thinking out loud.
I'm thinking of 3 or 4 people right on top of my head that is 100%.
Can we invite them on the show?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
You want to? Yeah. Have you been boxing?
No,
Hey,
I mean, that is no truer statement because, and it does, it's a good feeling. You went out there, especially if you're new to being an entrepreneur, and you go out and you go put a deal together because the market's phenomenal. But you all just think you're great. I did it in 2003 or four. I thought I walked on water. It wasn't me. I mean, it was some of it was the market. I mean, it was me too. You got to hustle and put the work in, but I wasn't as much of a genius as I thought it was, you know. But
hey, what the hell is happening out there right now?
right now, it's strange because it's slowed down. The rates have made the payments. Neighborhoods are changing big time. Prices are changing because of demand. So like the lower price stuff has shot up. It's people moving out of the area and moving in with more money, putting a lot of money down, and there's still a lot of people doing that. So it's the pullback from the cities. I think more than anything, flooding other suburban markets, flooding other, and then the ability to work from home. People want to be in a nicer home because even the rates going up hasn't slowed down the demand that much. It definitely is less demand now than it was a year ago, but not much more. I mean, still, if it's priced right, they're still flying off the shelves. But if it's a little high, where last year was a little high, the market either would catch up to it within a couple months and you'd sell it anyway, or um, people would pay it anyway and just overpay for it. And that was happening. But that's not happening as much now. I don't see it more or less stuff is moving at like it's the rates are keeping people on the fence, no doubt. Because look, if the house went up 50 grand and the rate went up double, it's that person now, that whole demographic changed.
Wow.
That house is a different person. It went from being a working class person to a stockbroker and attorney, by the house. That's all I can afford it, So um yeah, it's just it's definitely better now than it was 6 months ago for me anyway. For the summer was awful. I thought the summer was just horrible. Just no inventory. People wanted out. Everybody was pissed off at the prices. A lot of people putting in offers and trying to get money back on inspections and different things, and um, people that had to move. But so it started definitely inventory starting to pick up a little more now. I see that.
What are you seeing people do with their equity?
Most of them are selling and putting in another house. I haven't seen anything like yeah, most of them are just moving into other houses, either upsizing or downsizing. That's been my experience anyway. I haven't seen a lot of people investing into other stuff.
What's morale like on the consumer side?
Um, well, so I'm only dealing with the sellers. They're all pretty happy because, like like I said, I'm able to get a lot of as-is sales out of them. Again, I'm experienced. I know how to structure it right in the beginning, so I'm not playing those games where they overprice it and they come in high with a high offer to try to renegotiate later. That's another reason I put the contract thing in there first. Sometimes I try to feel out the seller before I give them that information. I want them to know my seller signs this offer you put in, you're bound to it. So don't write it if you're not serious. Or don't play games. We're not. But yeah, like I said, people I'm dealing with are all happy because they're all sellers. But a lot of buyers, I'm sure, aren't real happy. I just had one. I closed 2 days ago. The last minute, the seller just wanted $2,000. Like it was a septic. It was an old septic. We knew it was old in the beginning. We negotiated on that front. I said we're not going to replace it. So figure on replacing it yourself down the road. It's working. Everything's fine. So toward the end, he said, "Oh well, we need this letter from the county saying the septic's fine." I'm like, "We're past all that. We're past all that date." So then he just wanted a concession. He's wanted $2,000. I knew he's just mad he's paying for it. And he's like, "I feel like the seller made no concessions." I'm like, "Well, they didn't. I mean, I drew it up that way. I represent the seller. I don't. They're not going to make any concessions." But he ended up, we stuck our guns. He ended up closing, but and he was happy at closing because it was a nice house. But that morale is definitely, I think it's getting, and I think that's where the commissions come in too, which is contributing to that.
What's going to happen to these real estate companies that are paying out 1.7 billion?
I mean, that's going to be a big hit to a lot of people. I think, I mean, some of them are going to have to make some major changes, and they're going to have to change their models. Not going to be. I mean, some of these, and let's face it, some of these companies just have. You can't, if your broker doesn't know your name, you can't walk past them in the hallway. You can't say, "Hey, John, how you doing?" Which there's no way you can have 1,000 people unsupervised in a company, and that's going to end well. And you're just not. It's just, and they're supposed to be fiduciaries. That's just not going to end well. So I think they're going to probably make some changes, do some restructuring, change their models around a little bit, because I think a lot of them, the model is get as many people in, and just put them in like a revolving door and get 1 or 2 deals a year from them, so they don't want to pay their fee every month. The $100 or whatever it is, $200 some companies charge, and then there's people back out because they're not going to be able to. I think I don't think they're going to be able to navigate this new standard they're going to be held to work a buyer.
Where's the opportunity in 24?
Sharpening your skills to get listings, I think, is the opportunity, and being able to budget yourself, plan on a make a plan, have money to spend on marketing, different things. Obviously, video, delivering value to sellers, I think is it. 360 tours, floor plans. I think because it's going to correct, but I think it's going to stay a while. The prices, I think, are going to stay a long time because people like to buy bricks.
John, how can people follow you?
I'm on Facebook. I'm on Facebook mostly, TikTok, Instagram. Just look at my name, John Swartz. John Swartz Remax.
And the podcast name?
Podcast name we're in transition now. we're coming up. We actually we're doing it like as a team now. So we wanted to get a couple different personalities on it. So
what's it called?
It's cool. We're still coming up with that.
Oh, that's a good name.
Yeah. Actually is a pretty good name. It's catchy, right?
That's a good one. I like that name. We're still coming up with that.
I don't want it to be just real estate because I think it'd be like yawn after a while, but it's gonna be heavily based on real estate, investing, family life,
dude,
navigating it all. It'll be good.
I love the name. We're still coming up with that. That's a genius name. Like truly, I've never heard of anyone.
We go trademark it real quick before you get it up.
Yeah, I mean, truly, what a genius name of a show. We're coming up with that. Wow.
Yeah. So anyway, that's what's in the future. That should be coming up soon. That we're actually doing some things. I'm spending some money to try to get it right. So, how about you guys? How's things going?